Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Today we're going to take a writing test, and this test will really help prepare you for the GED Language Arts test and the HiSET reading test. Now, there is one thing that we're missing in this video, and that is actually writing the essay, but I have many videos that will help you with writing your essay. So, let's get started. Welcome to Purely Persistent. I'm Michelle. So the best thing you can do to really get the most out of this video and prepare for your exam is to download the slides. So in the description box down below, you'll see a link and you can download the slides for free. Or if you'd like to help support me, I'd really appreciate it if you'd pitch in a few bucks and help me upgrade my camera equipment so that I can make better videos. That's one of my upcoming goals. Let's get started on the video. So one thing that's important to remember is we're not taking a reading test, okay? So the directions will tell you to read. However, with the grammar section, when you're doing your editing, there's no need to read it. So I just kind of like to survey so I have a general idea of what is going on in the article. So I will just read here the first little tiny bit of the first line of each paragraph, okay? So buying a car takes research as well as money. Surprisingly, your local library might be good. When you have located a car that you think, finally check the vehicle's appearance. Okay, so we have a general idea of what's going on, right? How to probably buy a car. So now we're going to go straight to the answers. And this is how it's formatted on the HiSET test. GED might be a tad different. Okay, so what you want to do is, number one, you can see here that it's what's underlined, okay? So what we're going to do is we need to decide, should we keep that as is or should we replace it with one of the other options? So let's read it as is. Surprisingly, your local library might be good. Okay, let's try number two, or letter B. Surprisingly, a good place is your local library. C, surprisingly, a good place to start shopping for a car is your local library. Or D, surprisingly, for starting car shopping, your local library is a good place. So these ones can be a little bit subjective, and I would say choose the one that is the best, okay? Sometimes reading them out loud can definitely help too if you can hear them as well as read them. And so the answer here is actually C. And the reason is this sentence here is a topic sentence for the entire paragraph. And so you kind of want to give us a little bit more, remind us that you're talking about cars, okay? So then it's going to go into the detail maybe about the library and that sort of thing, but with car shopping. Number two. Which of the following would be the best choice for this sentence? Okay, so the sentence right here, don't forget how helpful reference librarians can be. Okay, so A is no change. B is move the sentence so that it comes before the preceding sentence. So preceding, if you don't remember what preceding means, just see how it says here pre, right? Pre means before, right? So the sentence right before. So the sentence before starts right here. There you can access online consumer guides that rate such things as performance, comfort, and mechanical reliability. Okay, so move that above. C, move the sentence to become the first sentence of the next paragraph, paragraph 3. And I don't have that included on here, so it's not really very helpful. Or D, omit the sentence. So really, let's think about it. Don't forget how helpful reference librarians can be. Does that really relate to this? No, it's saying go to your library, do a little research. Yes, the reference librarians are helpful, but I don't think we necessarily have to have that in there. So our answer here is D. Okay, here's the next paragraph, right? So we could review that to see if it was the answer before, but I actually know it's not, so we're going to move on. Okay, so number 3. Was the oil changed as scheduled to prevent wear on the engine? B, to prevent wear on the engine, the oil was changed as scheduled? That sentence doesn't really make sense, right? C, oil changed as scheduled to prevent wear on the engine? Okay, B and C here, we're kind of, turning sentences into questions that aren't really working out, right? D, was the oil changed to prevent wear on the engine as scheduled? So, what we have going on here, not that this term actually matters that much, but this is called a dangling modifier. So right here, as scheduled, so you might look at D and say, oh, that one is it, but actually it's not, because prevent wear on the engine as scheduled. So let me ask you, what is scheduled? Is it the oil change? Yes, it is oil change, but D is saying that the wear on the engine is scheduled. Is your engine like, oh, we've gone 2,000 miles. I guess we better have that extra wear on it, right? No, what is being scheduled is the oil change. And so that's why right here, scheduled needs to go right here with oil change. So that's, it's actually a dangling modifier. And sometimes those can actually be really silly, but things like that are frequently on the HiSET and GED tests. So definitely be mindful that the wording goes where it's supposed to, because something like this, you could easily breeze through it and be like, oh, D makes sense, and then get it wrong. Number 4. So I'm actually going to start right up here with don't, because I want to read the entire sentence. Don't forget to take mileage into consideration, as well as the number of owners the car has had, and also seeing if you can get information about any damage the car may have sustained. Okay, so one thing you want to do when you're looking at these is make sure that your verbs are very consistent. Okay, so notice how here it says to take, but then it changes it right down here to seeing. So that kind of, we want to, it should maybe say to see or something like that. But this is, this sentence, it's not necessarily a run-on. You could, it has a lot of attributes as a run-on, but it's not exactly a run-on. However, it's too long. Okay, this sentence is way too long. So, but let's just look at a couple of options. Okay, so it definitely needs to be changed. Okay, so A is not our answer. So B. Okay, so as well as the number of owners the car has had, comma, also obtaining. So this would be a comma slice. Okay, a comma doesn't belong right there. C. As well as the number of owners the car has had, getting also the information. Getting doesn't really make sense right there, right? Remember we talked about getting, and it has up here to take, right? So that's sort of changing the context of the verbs. We want to keep our verbs very consistent. So C is not it. All right, let's take a look at D. So D says, as well as the number of owners the car has had, period. Try to obtain information. Okay, so this is our answer, and I want to show you a couple things. So see how the subject in here is an implied you. Okay, so the first part says, don't forget to take, right? And the second part here would be try to obtain information. So that's really consistent, right? The first one, don't forget to do this, and then try to obtain this. And so D is the answer, just really because of the consistency, and then it also breaks apart that extra long sentence. Okay, number 5. Okay, so we have a nice little sentence, and should we throw in a semicolon, a colon? nothing, or leave it as is. Okay, so let's take a look. We'll start right here with it's worth the cost to identify potential problems before you make a major investment. Okay, so before you make a major investment is a sentence fragment, okay? It's missing a subject. And so it's not A. B, it's worth the cost to identify potential problems before you make a major investment. Yeah, but let's take a look at C and D. Okay, C, if you're going to separate two sentences with a semicolon like it does in C, they have to be complete sentences with subjects, verbs, and complete thoughts. And like we said before, the before you make a major investment does not have a subject. So it does not qualify as separating the two sentences with a semicolon. I actually have a whole video on semicolons if you want to watch it. Okay, I'll put a little link right up there. D. Okay, a colon is not necessary in this case either, just because that's not really how colons work, okay? Colon would either like just have a list after it or something like that, but this is just part of the sentence, okay? So B here is the answer. It just continues the sentence on. If a comma was an option, that would also not work because that would make it into a comma splice, but I have a whole video on commas. 6. Which of these sentences, if any, should begin a new paragraph? Okay, so we have to figure out, it's kind of a long paragraph that we've got here, and we need to sort of read through it and determine if there's one point that kind of starts a new paragraph, okay? So I'm going to read the entire paragraph. Again, the wording here is a little bit small, and so you might want to download the slides so that you can see this a bit better. Finally, check with the vehicle's appearance. If a body has numerous dents and scratches and the inside is ruined, chances are the engine hasn't been well maintained. If there are major rust spots, you can expect the body to deteriorate rapidly. While these suggestions won't guarantee a foolproof purchase, they can help you make an informed decision. Researching a car before making an investment is always time well spent. Okay, so again, there's a natural cutoff in that sentence, or in that paragraph. So A is not the answer, because there's a natural spot where it kind of goes through everything. Okay, this might be a good point to look at the entire article and just remind yourself of what everything else was about. But the answer here is going to be right here. While these suggestions, right? Because it had the suggestion about the appearance. It had the suggestion of going to the library, right? There were several suggestions that were in the article, and now it's just sort of wrapping it up here at the end. So the answer here is going to be C. And when you answer a question like this, sometimes I feel like it's easier to read through it and determine the answer and then go back to and then go back to the question and eliminate and just circle the answer that you know it is, rather than going through and eliminating the wrong answers. So we're moving on here to another article. And notice at the top, it's in bold. I always like to read what's in bold, and then again, just read a little bit of each paragraph so you have a general idea of what's going on. After attending a local political debate, a blogger wrote the following article. Okay, and that's really all I'm gonna read, because then the rest says to actually read it. Okay, so citizens filled the Mesa Vista High School auditorium. Mrs. Valdez moderated the debate. Mayor Mahoney opened the debate on a serious note. Okay, and then I have it right back there again. And the last one, after the citizens commented, indicated. So, have a general idea of what's going on. Okay. Ooh, look at this. Nice little grammar question here. So, let's read what it says. Citizens filled the Mesa Vista High School auditorium Thursday evening to hear the two mayor's candidates participate in a special debate. Okay, so first of all, mayor, right? So mayor's candidates. So, two mayors candidates, right? Which should be plural, mayors or candidates, right? Are there two mayors or are there two candidates? There are two candidates, right? So the answer is not going to be A, because mayors, we don't need that to be plural, right? Because we're talking about one mayor. The two mayor, and this here we have apostrophe S, right? The apostrophe S right there. Apostrophe S can either be, I guess, is possessive, right? Or it can be a contraction. So B could be mayor, the mayor's candidates. So like the mayor has candidates, or else it can be the mayor is candidates. Okay. C would be candidates is for mayor. The two candidate is for mayor. Okay, that's crazy, right? And we know that candidates needs to be plural, not possessive. Okay, D, the two candidates for mayor, right? The two here should go right next to candidates, not next to mayors, because we're talking about the two candidates. And so therefore our answer is D. Okay, number 8. Sorry, this one is a little blurry. So it says, Ms. Valdez moderated the debate beginning by introducing the candidates. Okay, so again, you want to take a look at the verb tense. So here it says moderated, right? So moderated the debate beginning. So it should be, we want to be as consistent as we can. And notice how it says began, right? So moderated and began, right? So that's actually going to eliminate A and B. So do we say Ms. Valdez moderated the debate and began by introducing candidates? Or Ms. Valdez moderated the debate, began by introducing the candidates? So this is actually not a place where a comma goes. That would turn it not really even into a comma splice, because the second half is missing a subject. So C here is our answer. So she moderated and she began, right? 9. Which of the following facts would be the most relevant to include here? So let's read our sentence here. Mahoney, who has lived in the city for many years, and Chancellor Luther Quinn, her challenger. We have here the challenger, and then does it matter if she's lived in the city for many years? Does that really relate to it? Not really, right? We want to know if Chancellor Luther Quinn is her challenger, then a positive that sort of describes Mahoney should probably relate to actually like her political stance, right? Okay, a mother of 3, again, that's not relevant right here. Who formerly practiced law, not relevant. Whereas D, who is seeking her 3rd 4-year term, right? Then that really ties in with her challenger with Counselor Quinn, right? So Mahoney, who is seeking her 3rd 4-year term, and Chancellor Luther Quinn, her challenger. That really ties in well. Number 3. So here we have underlined by the way. So we need to decide, is by the way necessary right here, or should we have secondly, in addition, or on the other hand? So because this is a transition, we need to understand what it's transitioning. So it's important in this case to read the whole paragraph. Mayor Mahoney opened the debate on a serious note, describing some difficult issues facing the city. Counselor Quinn's opening statement, by the way, consisted primarily of hilarious anecdotes about his years as a student at Mesa Vista. Right? So here, we're changing essentially the tone, right? Mayor Mahoney's tone, very serious, whereas Counselor Quinn's was more comical, right? So we wouldn't necessarily keep it by the way. By the way doesn't really make sense right there. And also secondly and in addition don't make sense either, right? Because we're changing it, right? So on the other hand, really shows, oh, I'm switching that. And one thing, when you're writing your essay, you definitely want to make sure that you're including transitions. Any of these would work depending upon the context of what you're writing about. The essay readers on the HiSET and GED are really looking to make sure that you have solid transitions within your essay. So do include those. So now we're looking for spelling. Which of these words, if any, is misspelled? So sometimes spelling can be a little bit tricky. Sometimes on the essay, on the test, they will provide like the right way and the wrong way of each word, and that definitely makes it a little bit easier. In this case, on the other hand, it's not. They're only providing one way. So one word that is misspelled, just do your best. So none, primarily, not primarily, primarily. C, hilarious. D, anecdotes. Anecdote is actually a beautiful word. I tell my students that when they're providing a sample in their essay that relates to their own life, anecdote is a great word to use instead of like saying stories or something, right? Here it says hilarious anecdotes. So something to consider. It's a higher vocabulary word and they're looking for that on the essay. But the answer here is B, primarily should have an I in it. Primarily. I guess 2 I's. Okay, let's look at number 12 here. So starting with, the mayor was impressive with her thorough knowledge of the issues, often citing programs she has initiated during her time in office. So what we have to do is we have to determine how to have it. Right now, the way it's written, it is a run-on, okay? So we don't really want to have it like that. C, though, on the other hand, turns it into 2 complete sentences, and the second half, often citing programs she has initiated during her time in office, that is missing a subject. And no, she is not the subject in this case. The mayor is still the subject, so we can't have that there. Okay, D, on the other hand, if you put a comma there and then you reword it, often she was citing programs. Right now it has that subject, which is she. However, putting a comma there doesn't work because that turns it into a comma splice. You might want to watch my video that I have on run-ons. So the answer here, just a simple comma that just describes the issues after the word issues, just goes into a little bit more detail. That would work right there. 13. During the question and answer period, one distinctive difference between the 2 candidates became apparent when you took a look at their responses to a question concerning the proposal for a recreation center. So here we have became apparent when you took a look at their responses to a question. So one thing to remember, this isn't always the case, but the answers that are a little more succinct, a little bit shorter, can sometimes be the answer. This A here, I mean, it's a little wordy, right? So let's look at the next one here. So one distinctive difference between the 2 candidates was made when taking a look at their responses to a question. One distinctive difference between the 2 candidates became apparent in their responses to a question. One distinctive difference between the 2 candidates was made by responses to a question. So essentially all of these work, right? Any of them you could convince yourself that it works. But the answer is C. Notice how C and A are similar with their higher vocabulary. However, C is more succinct, okay? B and D, they both align with, like they will both work just fine. However, the vocabulary is a little bit lower in those, which sort of doesn't align with the tone of the rest of the paragraph, the rest of the essay. Number 14, the mayor was voicing her continued opposition, saying that it would tear up one of the last wooded areas in the city. Okay, so what we have to look at is it past tense, future tense, present tense, all the different tenses, okay? And so if you take a look at the rest of the essay, you'll notice how it's in past tense, right? Because the blogger is writing the article as if the event had already happened, right? So the answer is simply here voiced. And you could honestly go up and look in the sentence prior to this one that's not shown on the screen, and that would maybe give you a clue to use just a simple past tense. 15, she suggested, why not fix up an empty building on the waterfront instead? So let's look at the other one. She suggested to fix up an empty building. She suggested fixing up an empty building. She suggested they could fix an empty building. Okay, this is again the type that you could kind of confuse yourself with how they're worded. Okay, definitely just a little bit strange with the wording. So again, look at the answers that are in the rest of the sentence, and then it might kind of give you clues, or rather the rest of the paragraph, okay? So the answer here is definitely not A, right? A is too casual of a tone. Why not fix up, right? She suggested to fix up an empty building. That one's a really good one. I would put B as a definite maybe. C, she suggested fixing up an empty building. Or D, she suggested they could fix up. Again, the they is not really necessary. So when you find yourself with two answers and you don't know which one to do, I would just guess. Okay, guess which one you think the answer should be. Okay, in this case, it's actually C. She suggested fixing up an empty building on the waterfront instead. 16. So we'll start right here with but Counselor Quinn, who strongly supports the original plan, pointed out that where the site is, most people can easily get. All right, so we'll start with here, pointed out. Pointed out that the site for where the center is to be located is one people can get to easily. C, pointed out that the park is at a location that most people can get to easily. D, pointed out the park site for putting the center is in a location that most people can get to easily. Okay, so with this one, as I mentioned before, choose the one that's a little bit less wordy. And so they all sort of say the same thing. 16A though is, yes, that's the one that's the least wordy, but we need just a little bit more to the little phrase there. So that's why, even though it's the shortest one, C gives us a little bit more, but still being very concise. Number 17, audience members too were divided on this issue, though most feeling that the recreation center is needed. Okay, so remember, this is in past tense, right? The whole article is in past tense. And is feeling in past tense? No, right? Feeling is present tense. Feels also more of a present tense. So now we have would feel or felt. It's not a would feel, right? That's kind of a hypothetical. They would feel this, right? So the audience members, they felt, right? So D is our answer. The writer is considering splitting paragraph 3 into 2 paragraphs. The best place to begin the new paragraph would be with, this is similar to a question that we just answered, right? So let's take a look here. So I'm going to read the whole thing. We have 4, 5, 6, and 7, but we kind of have to know what's going on in the first part, right? So Mayor Mahoney opened the debate on a serious note, describing some difficult issues facing the city. Councillor Quinn's opening statement, by the way, consisted primarily of hilarious anecdotes about his years as a student at Mesa Vista. The mayor was impressive with her thorough knowledge of the issues, often citing programs she has initiated during her time in office. Councillor Quinn also had a good grasp of the issues, but as a council member, he naturally has fewer accomplishments that affect the entire city. During the question and answer period, one distinct difference between the two candidates became apparent when you took a look at their responses to the questions. Okay, and then it kind of goes into the questions, right? So I would say right here, this number 5, that just talks about it. Started with the opening and their accomplishments, and then it went to the question and answer part. So the answer here would be B at sentence 5, where it goes into that next part of the debate, right? For questions like this, you just have to read through and you have to determine which one is the best, okay? Honestly, I don't prefer these ones. They're a little bit tricky, but just do your best, okay? So we have A. After this debate, citizens' comments indicated that although the audience was clearly more entertained by Councillor Quinn, there was no decisive winner. B. After listening to citizens' comments after the debate, there was no decisive winner, although the audience was clearly more entertained by Councillor Quinn. C. Although the audience was clearly more entertained by Councillor Quinn, it seemed there was no decisive winner during citizens' comments after the debate. D. Citizens' comments after the debate seemed to indicate there was no decisive winner, although the audience had clearly been more entertained by Councillor Quinn. What do you think the answer is? It's actually going to be D. So notice here the first part of the sentence is very, it's right to the point, right? And then it gives us a little bit more information about Councillor Quinn. So those 19 questions that we went over came from the HiSET Language Arts Writing Practice Test 1. Now I said I was going to provide 30 questions in this video, so this one isn't necessarily a question, but it's a good little meme, okay? So your dinner versus your dinner. One leaves you fed, the other leaves you dead. Okay, so I actually have a video coming up on grammar memes and I'm so excited for it. So notice here how the first one, your dinner, Y-O-U-R, that is showing ownership, right? Your dinner. Here is your dinner, right? The second one is a contraction, which is taking two words and sort of combining them together. So U''RE is simply you are. But instead of saying you are dinner, you are, it just sort of became your, okay? So your dinner. So it's like, ooh, I'm hungry, right? You're my dinner. So that's the difference between your and your. Really make sure that you use yours and your correctly, okay? Now's a great time to take a little pause and get some water. So, did you know that your brain is made up of 80% water? And if your brain is like 2% dehydrated, then you will cognitively not do as well. So, it's just a fancy way of saying you won't think as well if your brain is dehydrated. So when you're taking a test, especially, you want to make sure that your brain is very well hydrated. So the day before, drink lots of water. And the day of your test, drink lots of water as well, okay? I'm actually drinking just sparkling water, so it's water that has bubbles in it. We have a little CO2 tank that we sparkle our water with, but I absolutely love it. But drink up. So this here is something that I actually like to do in my class a lot, okay? It's a great little warm-up. So we're looking in this paragraph for 10 errors, okay? They could be grammar errors, they could be spelling errors. We're just looking for 10 errors. So I'm going to set a timer for 30 seconds and I want to see how many errors you came up with. Well, how many did you find? How many errors in this did you find? Comment below and tell me how many errors you found. Okay, so let's go through this. I love it because you never know what we're gonna find. There will be lots of little commas throughout. And also, if you enjoy learning grammar, sort of going through something like this, definitely leave a comment below and tell me that as well. I would definitely appreciate it. I like it. But do you like it? Okay, so here we have on May 11th, 1858. So we actually need a comma right after 1858, okay? After you have a year where it has the date and the year, you need to have a comma after the year. Okay, so on May 11th, 1858, Minnesota became the 32nd state. Woohoo, Minnesota! Okay, Minnesota get its name. Does Minnesota get its name? No, Minnesota got its name, right? This is past tense. You could also say Minnesota gets with an S at the end, but we're gonna go with it like this. Now, it's right here should actually not be ITS. ITS is it, comma, or it is. So that's another contraction, it is. So it's in the possessive form is actually just ITS. So Minnesota got its name from a Dakota Indian word. So Indian in this case should also be capitalized because it's talking about Dakota Indian word that means water that reflects the sky. So here we have to have a quote at the end of sky. Now notice though that this quote is after the period, okay? We put quotes after periods. We don't put quotes in the period and have the little period by itself. Periods don't like to be by themselves. They're like commas. They like to hug things, okay? Now, notice here, though, there's not a comma after means, right? A Dakota Indian word that means water that reflects the sky, because it's not actually somebody saying something. So even though there are the quotes there, it's not a quote, okay? Not a quote that someone is saying, so we don't need to have a comma right there. Thousands of years ago, Minnesota was covered by glaciers. So sometimes, like, I don't know if you caught that, but I said covered, even though it just says cover, okay? So it's was covered by glaciers, right? Not present tense, but past tense. As the glaciers melted, comma, lakes and rivers formed. Have you ever heard, that's like a herd of elk or a herd of buffalo, right? It should be H-E-A-R-D. Have you ever heard Minnesota called land of 10,000 lakes? Okay, so we've got our quotes, right? Even though it's not somebody saying something. But in this case, the quotes actually go before the question mark, okay? Because the whole sentence is the question, not land of 10,000 lakes. Okay, land of 10,000 lakes is just a little statement or a little phrase within an entire question. Okay, and so commas like to hug things and periods like to hug things, but question marks, they don't have to. Okay, so the question mark goes after the quotes. The state actually has more than 12,000 lakes. Okay, lakes is just, should not be capital, but just a lower L. And the reason is we capitalized important things, okay? We capitalized proper nouns. Lakes is just a common noun, so we don't need to capitalize it. It has more shoreline than California, Florida, and Hawaii combined. So California should actually have a quote right after it. California, Florida, and Hawaii combined. You could put a comma right there as well. That's called an Oxford comma. It's an optional comma. I've actually started to put commas in right before the and in a series, but it really doesn't matter. So how many do we have here? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 with that extra comma. So again, let me know if you liked this little edit that we did here. I think it's kind of fun, just a little bit different than regular questions, but is giving you the grammar skills that you'll need to do well on your test. That, my friend, is it. We did another writing test. I do have a couple of other writing tests that are similar to this that you might want to check out. But guys, good job for sticking along. You know, the best way to really gain the most from this video is, downloading the slides, but also staying for the entire video. So you should be proud of yourself. Comment below and tell me that you stayed until the end. Okay, you are so important and you are going to rock that writing test, that language arts test. I definitely believe in you. Make sure that you believe in yourself and go do just amazing things in this world. Go make this world a better place. Peace, my friends.